people, and welcome to Westside Level, where we make your mixing dreams come true. Today, we're going to get into some drum bus compression, and this is going to be able to make our drums a lot thicker, a lot fatter, a lot bigger sounding. So, if that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned in. Let's start off by listening to the beat. But today we're just focused on the drums. So the first thing I'm going to do is solo our drums. Alright, so now that we got our drums soloed, I'm going to go ahead and pick a compressor to go ahead and start our compression. Today's weapon of choice is going to be the API compressor. We're going to use this compressor to turn this drum buzz from this to this. Is I'm going to reset everything on this compressor, give it a full reset, and we're just going to run our drum bus strictly through the compressor, not touching any of the controls yet. Alright, now when I'm thinking about this compressor, the first knob I want to go for is going to be our threshold knob. Reason I want to do this is because I want to start getting the compressor to work so we can start hearing the sound of it a little bit more dramatically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dramatically turn up this threshold knob on our drums and crush them. Notice with this API compressor plug-in, at the top it has a meter, and this meter is showing that we're knocking about 6 decimals of gain reduction. So that's enough for us to hear the effect of the compressor. Next knob I'm going to reach for is my release. Now the thought process for the release. Basically the way I look at it is we're trying to fatten up our drums but also not lose our groove. Slower the compressor, the fatter the drums, but at risk of losing the groove. The faster the release, the more you retain the groove of the drums, but the thinner of a sound you get. So let's try to find our sweet spot. And what my technique is, I'm going to just start off by going to the slowest, and then I'm going to go to the fastest. So let's hear. So I like the sound that the release gives us when we're setting it at 5 milliseconds. And again, what I'm listening for when I'm setting a release is how can we fatten up our drums but also keep the groove of the drums. So let's go ahead and continue. And just to get more of a dramatic sound, let's go ahead and raise our ratio. Ratio is how hard the compressor hits. And we're going to turn that up so we can hear more of our compressor. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this attack knob and see what it does. Basically, my psychology behind it is that the faster the attack, the more compression you get, the more control you get, meaning that it hits exactly when you want it to, but at the expense of completely removing your punch. Now, when you give it a slower attack, you have a lot more punch and you're able to retain your punch at the expense of losing the sound of your compression completely. So again, we're looking for that trade-off. What I'm gonna do is start it off at completely fast and then slow it down. Alright, so I set our attack at around 3 milliseconds. The reason I chose the 3 rather than the 10 milliseconds or the 30 milliseconds is because I noticed that when we got around the 3 millisecond area, our kick drum and our punch of their mix opened up. But once we start getting to the 10 millisecond, the 30 millisecond, the sound didn't really change. So if we get no more punch, there's really no reason to give it more milliseconds of attack. We can keep it at 3. That way we retain more compression. Alright, so let's go ahead and start setting our threshold now. Because now that we have our attack and our release set, we can start, or as a matter of fact, before we set our attack and our release, we can set our ratio to a level that we actually want it. Because remember, our ratio is how hard we compress. So let's go ahead and set our ratio control. Alright, so I'll go ahead and chose the ratio at about 2 to 1. And the reason I chose 2 to 1 ratio is because we're dealing with drums here. So we really do want to be protective over our punch. So we don't want to go too high in ratio, or else it'll compress and completely eat away the punch of our drums. So I stick around 2 ratio just the way we get some compression, but we're also being very gentle with the punch of our mix. Lastly, let's go ahead and set the threshold. Alright, now when it came to setting the threshold, that was pretty easy. When it came to setting the threshold, that was pretty easy. I just used our VU meter at the top, which is at right now set to gain reduction, and it's showing our gain reduction. And I took around 1 dB of gain reduction using our threshold. So overall, we have all of our compression controls set. And there are 2 more sections, our tone and our link sections. We'll dive into those sections in more advanced tutorials into the future. But for right now, we're just going to use these compression settings. We're going to gain stage the compressor now. That way we can do before and after and get an accurate reading. This is gonna go ahead and be without the compressor. Here's with the compressor. And before we wrap it up, let me tell you what I heard with that compressor. So I noticed that we didn't only just gain volume, but we actually gained more clarity. It almost gave more of the tone of our drums, more of that kick drum tone, more of that clap drum tone, more of the hi-hat tone in there. And the reason being is because a compressor brings up the lower levels, so the lower parts of the drums that we couldn't hear before, now we could hear those a lot more clearly along with level. So run this back. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave it in the comment sections. Any comments, leave it in the comment sections. Give this a like and a share. Y'all be smooth. Go on.